What's up? I'm Nate and this is my channel and I do car stuff. This is my 94 Miata. It's super trash right now from sitting out in the Florida rain, but I'm going to redo part of my lighting setup and show you how I put it together. First off, I have to say that I've always loved the way underglow looks, no matter how bad of a rep it gets. I guess it's just the inner Fast and the Furious loving ricer in me. I'm also really into VIP cars, and as you might notice in other videos, I try to take ideas from those types of builds and incorporate them in mine where I can. I want to do some sort of underlighting on my Miata, but I really want to do something a little different, and maybe something that had a little bit more of an elegant look. That's how I wound up going with puddle lights, but instead of just doing the sides, I wanted to go all the way around the car. These are just some lights that I found on eBay, but the way that I first mounted them, you can see the lenses are exposed beneath the skirts and the bumpers, which doesn't look as good as if they were tucked, and you could just see the glow emanating from the car. It also resulted in them scraping, and I even lost the lenses on a couple of them. Also, my wiring job on the original install was subpar. I had a lot of sketchy crimp connectors tying it all together, and I didn't have any sort of quick disconnect plugs, so anytime I needed to remove a bumper or side skirt, I had to cut wires and resplice them again later. This is what I came up with. I bought a section of slotted angle and I cut the entire stick into two different lengths, always leaving a round hole in the center for the light to mount into. These will be my light brackets and will mount with Allen bolts on the inside of the side skirts and the rear bumper. I'm using Allen bolts because they're low profile and won't be very noticeable and won't catch on things. I laid out the brackets and figured out where I wanted to mount them. I used longer ones for the center so I can use the extra holes to zip tie wires, and the shorter ones fit perfectly into the corners of the side skirts. After I knew where I wanted the brackets, I bolted them to the bottom side of the side skirts, using one bolt through the center hole on each bracket and through the original light mounting hole on the skirts. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hey, that doesn't look right, and you would be correct. This is the opposite side that they will get mounted on. I'm just mounting them like this for now so I can use the other holes on the brackets as guides to drill the bolt holes. After drilling out the bolt holes, I took the brackets back off and figured out that the holes where the lights get mounted to the brackets weren't big enough, so I had to drill those out. I recommend always using vice grips or a bench vise when drilling out small metal pieces, because at some point the drill bit will catch and what you're drilling will try to rip your hand off, or so I've heard. Now I could drill out the window holes in the skirts the lights shine through. I used a micrometer to measure the size of the lens. I have a couple of step drill bits laying around and I measured those until I found one that was as close to the size as the lens as possible without being any smaller. A quick tip, when you're using step drill bits, color the step that you want to drill to with a Sharpie marker so you know when to stop. It's really easy to go too far and then you wind up with a hole way too big. I will be drilling out the original holes that the lights were first mounted in so that the position and spacing of them doesn't change. I installed all the lights into the brackets and then mounted them into the side skirts. When bolting in the brackets, I found that the lights didn't line perfectly up with the window holes they need to shine through. I used this saw drill bit to slit the bolt holes so I would have some adjustment to move the brackets and better align the lights. These drill bits are awesome. I especially recommend them if you want to do a body kit or aftermarket fenders, so instead of just drilling holes, you can easily make slits so you have adjustment to line things up. I slit all the bolt holes and now I could install the lights onto the underside or inside of the side skirts. I used 5 washers on each bolt between the bracket and the side skirt as a spacer to give the lenses the perfect height over the windows. After everything was bolted up, I did a test fit of the side skirt on the car to make sure the brackets weren't going to touch or rub on anything. I aired up the suspension as high as it would go so I could check for clearance. Everything fit great with room for days. I also figured out that for weird spots and angles like this, you can use your phone's front camera like a mirror to see around corners. After I knew that fitment and clearance weren't going to be issues, I took the side skirt back off to move on to the wiring. I used some 3-wire weatherproof connectors that I got off Amazon and soldered the female ends to each light. After the connectors were soldered to the lights, I built a wiring harness using 16 gauge wire and the other ends of the connectors. In the end, the side skirts and the bumpers all have their own wiring harness which can simply unplug from the wiring on the car, and the lights can be disconnected from the harness. Routing of the harness is pretty basic. First, the positive signal goes from the battery to a switch, and then from the switch there is a wire that goes back through the trunk, out a hole by where the spare tire tools are, and to the lights in the rear bumper. From there it just daisy chains all the way around the car. The ground is pretty similar. I found a good ground by the rear bumper that I used, and then used the same daisy chain method around the car following the positive wire. As I said before, I use weather pack connectors for every section so I can easily remove the body pieces later. I should have mentioned this before, but these lights have 3 wires because they not only have the traditional cool white colored LEDs, but they also have amber LEDs which are tied into my turn signals. I still need to wire in a relay so they work the way I would like them to, and hopefully that will be a future project video. I won't lie, I don't know tons about wiring, but there are a couple tips I can confidently give when it comes to making your own wiring harness. First, buy multiple colors of wires and match them up accordingly. You don't want to get confused about what wire goes to what later. Weather pack connectors are awesome and are way more reliable than a bunch of separate spade connectors. The last tip I can give you is that braided wire loom with heat shrink on the ends makes all the difference in how your wiring harness comes out looking. I got the wires, the braided loom, and the heat shrink all off Amazon for very cheap. Hey, thanks for checking out my video. I know it's not a perfect step-by-step DIY, but hopefully it's enough to get you started if you want to take on a similar project. I only filmed the side skirts because the rear bumper will be done basically the same way, and the front bumper was pretty unique to my build because I have a bash bar that I had to figure out how to attach the lights to. Here it is in the dark. The footage is grainy, but you can see how it came out. The side skirts are exactly what I wanted. You can't see the actual lights at all, but they still leave a perfect circle on the ground. In the front, I moved some of the lights to point horizontally to light up the bumper mouth, which I'm really stoked on. Because I mounted the ground lights to the bash bar behind the bumper instead of the bumper cover itself, you don't see the white circles when it's aired out anymore, which is kind of a bummer. Here's a still picture in a very dark area so you can see how bright all the lights are. The grill area lights up well and even shines out the wheel wells. It kind of looks like a catfish with whiskers. If you're into this import car stuff and DIY projects like this, please hit the subscribe button so you can check out my new projects as I upload them. Put the place up. Woman face up.